Have you ever heard a musical artist described as having great chops? What does that mean? Well, the term chops is slang in the music business that refers to an artist that has developed great skills over time, whether they are a musician, composer, producer, or other titles associated with the music business. This is Scott Grimaldi, your host of Got Chops. Join me as I interview one musical artist per episode that I've had the pleasure of either performing, recording, or work with in my career. Plus, I'll be interviewing artists I've always wanted to speak with. We'll discover how each artist developed their chops, listen to their stories, and much more. This is Got Chops. The track playing behind me is from the jazz album Bonegasm that features today's guest artist on the bass trombone. As a freelance New York City-based trombonist, my guest also doubles on tenor, trombone, and tuba. She's played in a number of iconic Broadway pit orchestras that include West Side Story and the Radio City Christmas Spectacular. Her recording credits include the show Mrs. Maisel and the Grammy-winning recording of Beautiful, the Carole King musical, and her live performances include the Vanguard Jazz Orchestra and the Birdland Big Band. In addition, my guest is an adjunct music professor at Montclair State University, a bandleader of her jazz group Bonegasm, and was just listed in the 2021 Jazz Times Magazine Expanded Critics poll results. This first call bass trombonist, whose slogan is, "I play low notes," definitely got chops. Please welcome today's special guest artist, Jennifer Wharton. Good morning, Jennifer. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Very good. Thank you for being a guest on the podcast today. I really appreciate it. To fill my listeners in about Jennifer Wharton, she's a musician I've never met or performed with in my career. And after hearing her recordings on Spotify, I was immediately knocked out by this big fat sound that she produces on the bass trombone. And for the people in the audience that don't know what I mean by big fat sound, I'm talking about PHAT, another musical slang. And Jennifer, even though I'm a woodwinds player, the sound of the trombone is always in my ear when I'm writing music. And that inspiration came from the first time I heard Jimmy Pankow play the trombone from the jazz rock group Chicago. So you're a first call freelance New York City based trombonist who also plays tenor, trombone, and tuba. You have experiences on Broadway, recording work, performing with legendary big bands in New York. You're a leader of your own trombone ensemble with a rhythm section behind you called Bonegasm, which we'll talk about today. You're an adjunct trombone professor at Montclair State University in New Jersey. And congratulations, you were just listed in the 2021 Jazz Times Magazine Expanded Critics poll results. So welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. Before we start with the questions that I'm interested in hearing the answers to, how did you survive this god-awful snowstorm?
Well, other than it snowing in our bathroom through our skylight, we did okay. The biggest drag is walking my little dog because the snow was taller than her.
Yeah, I'm sure. But at least you don't have to go outside and shovel. You just shovel your bathroom. That's okay. That's a smaller space to deal with. What does the musical slang "got chops" mean to you?
Means that you have some technical ability. You when brass players refer to chops, it's usually the condition our lips are in. So if someone has chops or they have to work on their chops or their chops aren't feeling good, it's always relating back to our face.
Where were you born? Where did you grow up? And do you come from a musical family?
Uh, so I was born and raised in Pittsburgh, California. We have no H on the end. It's Pittsburgh, just, yeah, Burg. And that's about an hour outside of San Francisco. So it's in the East Bay. And yeah, my family was not musical. There were records played in the house, but no other instruments. My sister did toy around with the alto sax for a minute. But when I started playing music, my family was fully prepared for me to give it up. And actually, they wanted me to give it up. So, yeah, I did quit. My family convinced me to quit when I got to high school. So I did quit.
Oh, boy.
Yeah.
So what was the inspiration to play the bass trombone? I'm assuming you began playing tenor trombone in grade school through middle school and then high school, and then maybe your band director or band directors recognized your talents and abilities and suggested that you switch to bass trombone?
No, it's actually funnier than that. Someone handed me a trombone with an F attachment trigger, which is, like half of a bass trombone. But for a long time, that was the only bass trombone, like before the 40s or 50s. That was a standard bass trombone, just F attachment. And I was in 7th grade, so it was my second year of playing. And I always say, well, from then on, I basically played bass trombone because I didn't play for a while. And then when I started playing again, the guy handed me a proper bass trombone. But I realized that that's not 100% true. I was sort of playing tenor at the same time in junior high. And then I played it for a semester in high school. So I did not play a lot of tenor trombone. It's definitely been more bass trombone. And I think it was just because I had that initial sort of relationship with, having an attachment on the trombone and knowing that there were these other notes you could play. So the band director just remembered that and said I was going to be the next bass trombone player once he lost the one that graduated. So
there you go. So the person did recognize your talents and said, yes.
Yeah.
Kids often take the suggestions of a band director sometimes as a punishment. If you're playing alto sax in the band and the director says, I'm going to switch you to bari sax. What do you mean? Well, you've got the chops. Mm-hmm. And we need someone that has great air support and can play those beautiful low notes with all the overtones. And if you're a young person, you think that's a punishment, but it's not. It's going to open doors for you.
Yeah, I never saw it as a punishment. I think initially it was I missed the audition for chairs, and so I just got put on the last trombone in the band. And but I didn't mind because it gave me this other thing to mess around with, and I had it was like a secret trombone. You got to play all these extra notes that no one else had, and you could play them in different places that no one else could. So I never saw it as like a punishment. I saw it as like an opportunity.
How many hours did you practice the bass trombone and the other brass instruments that you play when you were younger, and did you take private lessons on the trombone?
I didn't practice nearly as much as I should have practiced. But I did. I think once I got to high school, I took it much more seriously, and so I did practice because I think because I had quit playing and then started playing again, I always felt like I was behind. So there was incentive for me to practice. I was kind of embarrassed because I had missed so much. But in terms of God, I'm more of a fear-based practicer, so I can't really say that I practice consistently, which, I don't. I tell my students this all the time, do not be like me. But yeah, I practice when I need to practice. So if I don't have something to practice for, I'll give myself projects to keep my skills up, because otherwise I'll just, left to my own devices, I'll be on Netflix all day.
Well, during COVID, that's probably one of the only things we could do.
Yeah.
So I'm fascinated by this because from teaching band in different level of schools, I know firsthand, I know you do also, that once you get a child that quits, it's very rare that they come back. And you quit and then you came back. What was the motivation for doing that?
I just missed it so much. My high school had a really great band program, and I was a cheerleader. That's why my parents wanted me to quit playing music, because I got onto the cheerleading team, and so, but the band director was heavily involved. There was like, they went hand in hand, the cheerleaders and the band. So he was heavily involved, and he was always vibing me about being in band. And I missed it. And I loved all the people that were in band. Those were my people, much more so than the cheerleading squad. So when I started playing again, it was on my own. No one, other than the band director vibing me, I'm the one that chose to do it. I convinced my parents to go rent me a trombone. I created my own practice regimen because I wanted to get back in band. And, when I was trying to challenge up into the higher band, I'm the one that tried to create, I didn't have lessons. That was the other part of your question. I did not have lessons. In fact, I didn't have a proper lesson until I was in my second year of college. So, I thought you had to be really good to take lessons. So I was just sitting there doing it on my own because I wasn't good enough.
Who were your musical idols or influences when growing up?
I think I didn't know enough to really have a musical idol. I was just sitting there having fun. It was more me surrounding myself with people that were better than me. So it wasn't really that they were my idols, but the people I respected, obviously. And I didn't see another female trombonist working professionally until I was already working professionally as a female trombone. I met some folks along the way that were not professionals, but so it's hard to say that I, had a specific role model or something. I think I found things to admire in many musicians, from their work ethic to their success to how they acted on gigs, there's a lot. I tried to pull everything that I admired from everybody and, steal it. And like a good composer would do, steal certain elements and then put them into your own thing and make your own way.
Great answer. So I'm assuming your band director never came up to you and said, "Hey, Jen, check out this great trombonist, Brookmeyer."
If he did, I don't remember. It's entirely possible he did. I have no idea. But I only really started listening to trombonists when I was in college. So I went to junior college, and I started listening to, JJ, and obviously listening to Miles Davis. That's the most accessible jazz album of all time, right? Kind of Blue.
That's right.
And listening to that, and at the time the internet was not what it is today. You can't just at the couple taps of the keyboard and find 17 different recordings of a random solo piece you want to work on. So I would go to the Tower Records 2 towns away and try to look for trombone things, and quite often not find them. So I was just kind of relying on my own sort of investigative prowess, and no one really said, "Hey, you should check Joe Alessi out." I didn't hear Joe Alessi until I was in Boston. I didn't even know who he was.
And how many people would know listening about Tower Records?
Right? I know. I miss going to record stores. I miss it. I miss reading liner notes. I miss checking out who was on what recording. I think there are people that still appreciate all that, but it's fewer and far between. So I I do miss it. I miss that whole area of my musical life, you know.
Well, like an avid reader, like my wife, avid reader and scholar, when she has a book in her hand, it's a certain tactile experience. So for musicians to have, the vinyl in her hands and looking at those liner notes, oh, I know this person from that recording from that band, it means a lot to us.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So speaking about college, you've received your Bachelor of Music degree in trombone performance at New England Conservatory of Music. I'm assuming that was in classical music?
Yes.
I mean, what a great foundation. What a great place.
Yeah. I studied with Doug Yo, and he was amazing for where I was, like, personally as a musician, everything. It just was a dream to work with him. And, I've remained friendly with him and consulted him many different times since leaving. But yeah, he was awesome. And the school, like, I will say this, coming from California and coming from a junior college and going to a music conservatory was a complete culture shock, especially in Boston. Boston is not the friendliest of towns. And it was eye-opening to see, here I am in this school full of amazing musicians, but they were really, quite a few of them were really lacking in social skills, which I felt like I was, maybe not the best musician at all, but my social skills were a little bit better than that. But yeah, it was eye-opening and kicked my butt.
Did you have the experience that most brass and woodwind players have coming out of high school? You have the talent, you're accepted into that great conservatory or jazz school, and the first thing your professor of trombone says, we got to change your embouchure, your aperture, your lip position is not right, your diaphragm, and all of a sudden you're cut down a couple of pegs and you end up doing long tones for like 6 months before you really get to the point where you want to be.
No one tried to change my embouchure, thank God. I know, and I teach now. I teach at Montclair State University, and several students have had their embouchures changed and everything. And I never had experience with that. And I think some teachers teach that way. They teach a specific embouchure because that's what they do. But for me and just kind of where I came from and what I did, I feel like work with the setup you have. And then if you can't do something, okay, maybe consider changing it. But if someone's making a good sound, they just look, you don't think that they look right. You're listening with your eyes and not your ears. If it sounds good, I don't care what it looks like.
Well, you definitely have a natural talent and a great, great inner ear. But, when you play an extreme low or extreme high instrument, to play it with ease, bravo to you. I mean, that's why, a lot of doors have opened for you. That's my feeling.
Oh, thank you.
So upon graduating from NEC, is that when you decided to move and settle in New York City and pursue work as a professional trombonist?
I did a little back and forth. I went home for 2 years and then got into the orchestral performance program at Manhattan School of Music. And so I went back to the East Coast, back here to the East Coast, and started school. And within a month, maybe, I had a pretty bad falling out with my private teacher. And it, to the point where it was like, we all have these negative voices in our head, right? But this guy was a horrible human.
Oh, boy.
And when he was like a shark, when he smelled blood in the water, just like, when he found a weakness, he went right after it because we've had this falling out. And he said to me, he like reinforced all the negative voices in my head. And I literally almost quit. I lost like 15 pounds, because I was so stressed out and just hated life. And I had the worst experience, but I stayed there for the whole year just to piss him off because I'm an asshole. So it was awful. I hated it. I absolutely hated my time there. But what it did was it gave me some connections in New York. I lost the sort of the I was no longer as naive as I was when I started. It sort of gave me, a tough lesson about music and just about, horrible people. But it did, callous me to a certain extent. And after that experience, I decided I was never going to pay to play music again. I was there on a like half tuition scholarship, which is pretty significant considering how much it costs to go. But I decided I was never going to pay to play music again. And right as I was finishing my first year there, my only year there, it turns out, I got asked to do the pre-Broadway run of Wicked in San Francisco, which is, as a local, I was the local musician. So I said yes, and I never went back to school until 2020.
Wow.
Yeah, so that started my Broadway career, was this pre-Broadway run of Wicked. I met a bunch of people, and it really helped me along the way. I think it took me 2.5 years to move back to New York after that. But yeah, I came back and I had more connections. And even though it wasn't in the classical world where I thought I would end up being, I kind of found this other path, and it seemed to suit me a lot better.
Do you ever send little Christmas cards or stay in contact with that professor that was kind of putting you down, with your updated resume, to let him know what you're doing, what you have been doing? Obviously I'm being funny here, but
it is sort of funny because twice since I moved back to New York, there have been 2 times where he's contacted me and I did not respond. The first time was like the Allegro here in New York. It's the Musicians Union newspaper that would go out.
Sure.
They asked a question about, I think it might have been for, is there a Women's History Month? There is. I think it's March or something. There was some question posed to women in a very early issue of Allegro when I was here. So it might have been before 2010. And my response was something like, I wish I had known what I know now about the person that kind of like really shat upon me, if you will. And because, I found out all the stuff afterwards that would have been very beneficial to know going in to study with them. And I would have been more prepared, honestly. And so I was like, now I laugh sort of at the whole situation because it was so dumb. And he wrote me and said, "I'm sorry you misremember how things happen."
Oh, really?
Yeah. And then even later than that, this was just a few years ago, he sent me another message, and I can't remember even what that one was about. I just deleted it. Because, obviously I'm living rent free in his head. I don't talk, I never talked to him again. I saw him on a recording session, and I sort of looked up and he was just standing right there, and he stuck his weird little hand out to shake my hand. And it was very odd, but, miserable people make other people miserable. So if you let somebody like that in without knowing, the kind of person they are, and this happens, I think it happens a lot more often in music than it does in other professions. And we sort of take it much more personally. We just don't accept that someone's just a jerk. We think, oh my God, what's wrong with me that makes this person a jerk?
Right, because we look up to them, and
yeah,
they have a great big bio and a profile, and it's like, oh, I can't wait to study with this person. And then you're shattered when they start with that. But it comes down to them. They notice your talent right away, and they're jealous, even if they're in the business. But I think the sad thing about that is, you got to know that to this day, when your name comes up in that person's presence with his other students or her other students, they say, "Oh, Jennifer was my top student. I knew she was going to make it big." But you'll never hear about that, unfortunately.
Oh yeah, no, I don't. Those words never came out of this man's mouth. It's fine. It's totally fine. But now when I go and talk to students or if I'm teaching them, I'm like, look, quite often the best players are not the best teachers and not even good humans. So, and I always bring up Joe Alessi because he's the, god of the trombone, and just like, he's just a guy. Like, yes, he's extremely talented and he's an extremely hard worker and he does the thing and he does it really well, but he's just a guy like you and I. He's not a god. He's just a guy. I mean, don't tell Joe I said that, but
I'm busy today. Don't worry. You're recognized as a bass trombone specialist, obviously, but you also play tenor, trombone, and tuba. Plus, you're a recording artist, band leader, and music educator as well. How do you view or label yourself?
I think lucky, but also, I consider myself I'm a lover of the low notes. So I don't enjoy playing tenor, and I try not to tell many people that I do. But I love playing tuba and I love playing bass trombone, obviously, and that's where my heart is. So usually I try to stick to bass trombone and tuba just because I hate tenor so much. But now it's getting harder to do on Broadway, and it's kind of bit me in the ass a couple times where someone says, "Oh, do you play tenor?" And I'm like, "God, no!" But then I lose out on a gig, and the truth is, I do play tenor. So, it's that, yeah, that hurts when that happens. When I'm like a little kid stomping my feet because I messed up.
In your world, if you can double on a number or a couple of brass instruments, great, that opens doors. And that's the same way in my world as a woodwind player. But certain people see me as just a flautist. Some people just see me as a jazz saxophonist. And then when they find that you do the other, oh, you do that too? So people see us differently than we view ourselves.
Totally. Yeah.
So as a freelance musician, you've held positions on Broadway, as we just talked about, in shows that include West Side Story, King Kong, Jekyll and Hyde, the Radio City Christmas Spectacular, recording studio work for shows that include Mrs. Maisel, The Incredibles 2, the Grammy-winning recording of Beautiful, the Carole King musical, plus performing with the Vanguard Jazz Orchestra, the Dizzy Gillespie All-Star Band, the Birdland Big Band, just to name a few. Obviously, your classical training has prepared you to take on all these diverse music gigs. After years of professional playing experiences in various musical genres, do you now also consider yourself a jazz and commercial trombonist?
Yeah, that's when I saw this question on the sheet, I was like, oh wow, yeah, I always had a hard time calling myself a jazz musician because I didn't improvise for the longest time. Now I do. I'm by no means an expert, but I do a lot more of it now than I ever did in my entire life. But I think at the core of everything, I just want to be known as a musician, somebody I love to talk to, and just about kind of the concepts that we all have about ourselves in music is Marcus Rojas. He does everything. He's a great, amazing tuba player, and he does all genres, and he does them well. He's just like, it's the same 12 notes, it's just different styles. And he's right. He's so right. And it's not only am I putting myself in a box or putting a label on me that may or may not be correct, it's also really limiting. I started subbing with the ballet recently, and I never thought I would. It's not something I pursued. I just kind of thought that door was closed, kind of in the way that I thought that the door was closed on improvisation for me. And I started learning how to do that at age 39. So at age 44, I started subbing in the New York City Ballet, and it wasn't awful. And they've had me back. And so I guess, music is music. There are 12 notes. If you put them in the right order and hopefully with the right articulation and style, then you'll work. But I see no reason for us to limit ourselves or, other people. And especially for students coming up, it's quite possible they're not going to get an orchestral gig because there aren't that many. It will be an aspect of what they have to do. So why not teach the commercial stuff? Why not teach the jazz stuff? Why not teach the classical stuff to jazz folks? I know jazz folks that can't read tenor clef, reading tenor clef is a great transpositional tool. So it just makes no sense to me why there is this divide still to this day. But that's the way music education is set up. So we kind of all fall into it still.
Well, I agree with everything that you're talking about, and my background was the same. Okay, if you want to be a well-rounded musician, go study classical, go to a conservatory, and then go to a jazz school like Berkeley. So that's exactly what I did. I started at Berkeley. Then a couple of years later, I went to Manhattan School of Music. I was told to double on, all the key woodwind instruments, learn all different types of genres, and see what doors open for you. I'm sure you know who Jacob Collier is. I mean, what a genius. And not only his talent, but his knowledge of theory, harmony, ear training, and he doesn't care what people, label him as. He'll pick up a bass guitar, the guitar, a synthesizer, magnificent. But if he, with his talent today, was coming up in the ranks of like when I first went to college in the 70s, they would have said, wait a minute, you can't do that. And you're never going to amount to anything. You're going to be a jack of all trades. So times have changed and you have to go with it, right?
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
So let's talk about your ensemble, Bonegasm, a jazz group consisting of 3 tenor trombonists, a rhythm section, and yourself on bass trombone. So I have a couple of different subsections of this question. Talk about how you came up with the name of the group, the intention of having a trombone quartet to front the band rather than the typical 4-horn section, and for people that are listening, that entails a trumpet, a saxophonist that plays either tenor, alto, or both, 1 trombone, a tenor trombone, and bari sax, or maybe 2 trombones, and what it's like to have your husband, trombonist John Fetchuk, in the group arranging charts for you. Besides your albums Bonegasm, Not a Novelty, and the Christmas single Silent Night, are there plans to produce other albums or a single as well?
Oh, that's a lot.
Sorry.
That's okay. So the first question was...
I said, how are you? So how did you come up with the name? It's such a cool name.
Okay. Yeah. That was my YouTube username years ago
Oh.
before you needed an email to sign up for YouTube. Yeah. I think for a long time, all I had was a video of my dog, I think. And but that's, and as soon as I came up with it, as the name for the band, I was like, everything else just kind of fell into place. And I've received some backlash because of the name, because it sounds pretty suggestive. And I just tell those people, okay, this band isn't for you if you're offended by that.
Right, exactly.
And what hurts the most is when I get called out by other female trombonists. They're like, well, I can't send this to my students that are younger and female. And, my answer to that is like, I'm sorry. It's not my job to be the role model for them. I'm not trying to be. It would be nice if they liked the music, but I'm not trying. It wasn't the point in me putting together the band. So it was purely selfish why I put the band together. So I hope those people find me eventually, but I can't tell folks what to do or what to be offended by. And, they'll choose for themselves. It's good music. So hopefully they'll like it.
If I may correct you, it's great music.
Thank you.
What a sonority. I mean, you hear such richness and overtones. I'm sure the guys in your band are like, oh my God, this, I couldn't wait to be in a group like this. This is not just for classical anymore, a classical trombone quartet. This is phenomenal. I mean, people must go crazy when you play.
Well, people are always shocked at how much they like it, especially if they're not a trombone player. And there's such, history in terms of like trombone ensembles. There's a lot of history. It goes back hundreds of years. Gabrielli and, all the church stuff. So there's like people, when they hear it, it's pleasing to them and they don't know why. For me, I play in a lot of big bands, and I was seeing that some new big band writers just kind of didn't know what to do with the trombone section. Some people wrote really well for it, and other times, it was kind of an afterthought. And having recently dipped a toe into the arranging world, I can see it's like you're limited on what you can do with trombone because it's the meat of the big band sandwich. So I wanted to get composers to think of us in different ways. And I said, let me just commission these people to write for just trombone and see what they can do. And it's been, for the most part, it's been really, really successful. And people are shocked. I've had more than one person come up to me and say, I'm just surprised at how much I like it and how cool it sounds. And people forget. I think the biggest compliment for me is that they forget it's trombone. So that's huge. And, we keep aiming to do that. My goal is to continually expand the band's repertoire. You asked if a new album is in the works. And, you know, I'm working on it. I'm writing too, which is going to be new.
Good
I
for
wrote
you.
a couple tunes. Thank
Great.
you.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I arranged one tune and wrote an original last year. So that'll be fun. And I have to I went back to school in the pandemic. So I'm doing a master's project, which is all music that I wrote or arranged. So there will be 2 tunes on there that are Bonegasm tunes, but the rest of it is other ensemble configurations. So, you know, I'm trying to get better at all the things, and I didn't ever imagine I would have time to do that. But it's nice that I can apply it to my band and hopefully, you know, have a reason to keep going. I think some people, if they don't have a band, you know, who are you writing for? It's
exactly.
kind of
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
you know what? I've always been taught from the people I studied with in college and before that, and then after that, if something is of interest to you, do it. So you're known as a player, but I think I would like to write. And if you find that you're really good at it, keep doing it. And your talent comes out no matter what you do. And then you mentioned something about people are shocked about the sound of the trombone and then they quickly forget about it. Well, I'm sure you and your husband both know that studies have shown that the trombone is the closest thing to the human voice.
Yeah, it's exactly right. And I'm so drawn to songs, you know, for trombone that much to my husband's dismay, he hates words. He hates words.
Most musicians do.
Yeah, but I'm so drawn to it. And additionally, like on my first album, I sang a tune, and the second one I did not. Kurt Elling sang on my second album, but
wow.
We do have a tune that's sort of in the hopper that I do want to sing on. Maybe not for the actual album. Maybe I'll hire somebody else to do that. But I could sing it live if we have to alter the arrangement a little bit because I'm supposed to be playing and singing at the same time, which is hard. We have performed with me singing before. It's written in such a way where I cannot physically play the trombone and sing at the same time. Like, you know, I'm supposed to be playing a part while the lyrics are going on.
So, as I mentioned before, you have an unmistakable big fat sound, P-H-A-T, on the bass trombone and have such command of the instrument, especially with the extreme low notes. And your logo says, you know, you play low notes. You're very proud of that. And why not? You do it with such ease. Thus, the reason why you're in demand First Call New York City bass trombonist. I find it refreshing to see you buzzing on the mouthpiece warm-ups on your Instagram page, sharing new techniques that you're working on, but it's in a very humble approach. What is your motivation to share these daily warm-ups and or improvisation exercises on social media that you're now working on?
Well, there's a lot of shame in somebody like me. I've dealt with like shame issues because, you know, from the beginning when I quit playing and started playing again, I've always felt behind. When I transferred to NEC from junior college, I'd never played in an orchestra on bass trombone. Shame, right? I constantly feel like, even to this day, I feel like I'm an imposter and I shouldn't have any of the nice things I have. In fact,
No, you're thinking wrong.
I know. I mean, God, this is why they're a therapist. But even the downbeat poll that came out, you know, I had so much anxiety about that, and you know, I'm trying to practice things like that's why I posted it. Usually I don't post that stuff when good stuff happens because I'm too afraid of what people are going to say, that I don't deserve to be there, and you know, all these negative things, the self-talk that we all do on some level. And so I find if I can show people how vulnerable I am and how vulnerable I feel, then maybe somebody that's out there like me, you know, younger, might not feel as scared and as ashamed that they don't know these things. So I'm doing it more for the younger gen that didn't have this. You know what I mean? I wish that I had somebody say to me, that I believed. I mean, someone might have said this to me, but I wish they had shown me that it was okay to sort of be vulnerable and try the new things, even though you're old. And I can't change what happened in my past, but I can hopefully help somebody with their future. There's so much tied up with, my sort of earlier musical career, like so much meaning and just sort of sadness about a lot of things that happened or didn't happen when I was younger musician, that it really does drive me to try to be better to younger students and try to be vulnerable and authentic and not ever take anything I have for granted, and none of the opportunities that I've had do I ever take for granted. And I realize sometimes it's luck and sometimes it's talent, and quite often it's who you know. And so just to always be grateful for that stuff and humble is really important to me.
Absolutely. I mentioned the word humble before. After every gig I get off stage or even on stage, I look up and go, thank you. Thank you for this opportunity. And I never take it for granted. So how did you survive professionally during COVID this past year? I saw your recent Radio City Christmas shows were all canceled as well. What did you do during COVID to keep your spirits up? Did you create any music during that time? I know you have been creating music.
Yeah. So, I freaked out for the first couple months, trying to get my home recording, thing happening, and learning how to use Audacity. I don't even have like a proper digital audio work station, whatever. But it's fine. It's fine for what I do. So I got that set up. So I was doing tracks for other people. And then I started doing stuff for my band because my band was supposed to go to California in the spring of 2020. And then we were supposed to record an album in June. And obviously that didn't happen. So what did happen was we pushed it off. And music started happening outdoors in New York. So I got a gig for us. I got 2 gigs that were outdoors, and we recorded in late September instead of June, which was originally. And we recorded without my second trombonist, Nate Maisel, because he couldn't risk the COVID exposure because he has a young kid. And so we did it that way. He recorded remotely. We were as safe as we could be before the vaccine, before tests were, as widely available as they were, super separated and whatever. And yeah, so we did it. And I did a couple virtual videos with the guys. I think we did Alan's tune that's on the album Icefall. And then we did the same version of Silent Night that we released as a single this year. And, it's just kind of me giving myself projects and funding them. Sometimes I would I got commissioned to write a tune for my band, which was pretty fun. A fan commissioned, 2 fans commissioned John and I to work on a tune together. So I wrote the tune, and I'd say about half of the arrangement, and then he finished the arrangement. He put his special John sparkle on it. Yeah. And so some things have fallen into our laps, that we didn't seek out. And prior to the pandemic, I got a grant. So I felt like financially, I had to spend this money on doing that recording that we did. So why not make it happen during COVID, however we could? I would not choose to do a recording that way again, but it was very helpful for me to make it through the pandemic, just mentally. And I even did a big giant virtual video of all female musicians for International Women's Day last year. That took like a month.
Wow. Right.
Yeah. So I've been giving myself projects to do, and on top of the other stuff I get asked to do, and slowly but surely things are coming back, and you just gotta, keep on keeping on. That's how we've all been dealing with it.
You're certainly a role model. I don't know if you see yourself that way. I can see yourself also as a spokesperson for wellness with musicians. I can see you writing an article for, one of the magazines that we belong to if you're a member of Local 802. So in the past few years, you've also been working on your master's degree in jazz studies at New Jersey City University.
Mm-hmm.
Tell my listeners how you divide your time between being a working musician and a music student.
Well, right now it's easy because I just have one class.
That's good.
But I am working on my master's project. So right now it's waiting on a lot of other people to do work, which sucks for me. But so I'm anticipating that I'll have to do it'll be all a rush for me to do my thing when it comes up. But so I scheduled it. I think what's left I've scheduled mostly in March, and we'll take care of all that. But for the most part, being a student in the pandemic was easy because the first year was online,
right.
And last semester was in person, but I only had to be at school, I think 2 days a week. So that was helpful. And, my playing, my gigs, my level of working is not nearly what it was during the pandemic. I mean, before the pandemic. So it's been easier to do than it would normally be. I don't know how people go back to school during normal times.
They don't sleep or eat.
Yeah. I'm not a fan. I realize I used to love school and I don't enjoy going. Like being online was great. Everybody who was in school and was used to being at school hated it, but I loved it. I was like, I don't have to leave my house. I can wear my pajamas to school.
Right.
Sure, this is great. So it wasn't as hard as it would be under normal conditions, but it was a drag.
Right. I get it. One of the things that you posted that's related to this, your studies in jazz, and I showed this to my private students. One of the private students I just happened to be teaching bebop scales, after I taught them all the modes, and okay, let's do a little bit of non-diatonic stuff. And you just happened to post that thing about the importance of using and applying bebop scales, and how you sped the video up, made it really funny, but you drove home the point. Hey, I've got to work on this, and this is the way I do it. I write it out, I look at it, I try to memorize it, and everyone has a certain way of doing that. And I showed that to every one of my students, and that was great. So thank you. That was beneficial to me.
Yeah, I'm still at the point and the guy I was studying with told me not to worry about it, but I love looking at changes. I don't want to memorize anything. I'm too old. But it's not that I can't memorize it, but I love looking at change. I think it's because I spent so much time learning to be a good sight reader. I love having the music in front of me. So I like seeing where I'm going. I like, I realize there's an advantage to getting off the page, but I don't want to get off the page yet. I like looking at the chord changes.
That's great.
So, yeah.
So you were also posting and talked about you're now composing and arranging. That's fantastic. Do you ever go to your husband, John, for pointers and advice?
Absolutely. And it's much easier for me to do that for composition and arranging than it is for playing. I think playing feels so personal and feels so important. And if you miss a note, it's like taking a dump on stage. But but with composition, I'm fine. Like asking him stuff, I'm fine. not knowing things, and I'm fine when he corrects something. Having a minor ninth, God forbid, don't ever have a minor ninth unless you know what to do with it, unless you're Gil Evans. It's super fun, actually. He ended up teaching my arranging class at NJCU, so that was a lot of fun, and it also ensured that I would finish all my work on time, because I didn't want anybody to think that he was giving me special treatment.
Do you have an interesting or funny story to share about an artist or a musician you've worked with?
Sure. Yeah. It made me laugh to find out that Gary Simoleon hates playing bass clarinet. I won't go into why. I know the story why he hates playing bass clarinet, but that's his story and I won't tell it.
Wow.
But I had to be around him. Yeah, he does the most amazing fake of a bass clarinet on bari sax, and he's done it for years. So when on the jazz cruise, he actually had to play bass clarinet, and he sounded great. I don't know why he doesn't want to, but he sounded great. I have a video of it.
Wow.
But yeah, so it's funny, somebody as amazing and incredible as Gary Simoleon has their things. They have their things. They have their stories they tell themselves, and then, he's like, I can't play bass clarinet. Obviously he can.
Wow. Yeah. So that's his impression of himself, but everyone around him is going, oh my God, what a great doubler you are on that. And wow.
Yeah, exactly.
You market yourself extremely well on social media, plus you add a lot of humor with a lot of down-to-earth vibes when sharing your home life with the world. As a professional musician / educator, how important is it for you to use social media as a tool?
Oh, it's become super important, much more important than I think any of us want it to be.
I agree.
Some people some people that hire you, actually, like whether it's club owners or whatever, will look on social media to see how many followers you have, whether or not you're worthy. I think the older folks don't really need it. The more established people don't need it, but I think in order to remain relevant in this time that we're in, you have to. And to be quite honest, I'm a ham. So when it comes to like posting silly stuff on social media, I'm all for it. So I try to either entertain or make somebody laugh. I try not to do much else. Sometimes, it gets into serious stuff, but that's basically what I'm going for.
Well, it comes across loud and clear. It's just great. In the field of music education, you are a private trombone instructor and an adjunct trombone professor at the John J. Calley School of Music at Montclair State University in New Jersey. Besides giving trombone lessons, do you also conduct any ensembles and or other classes at Montclair State University?
Yeah, I teach the trombone choir and the trombone practicum class, and that's sort of new. I started doing that last spring. So this will be my third semester I'm doing it.
That's going to be very rewarding.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. And I had to cancel class the other day because of the snowstorm. So I was bummed. I had all this new music I wanted to read. But yeah, it's really important. Those types of classes are super important for the musicians to have an opportunity to test out like how they react playing solo music. It's completely different than playing in an ensemble. I still get nervous when I have to play solos. So, it's a skill, and you definitely, like, if you don't use it, you have to have someplace safe to really experiment with that. So I'm glad they have it, and I'm glad I get to be a part of it. It's really fun.
Well, that's great. I mean, they're getting a great experience with you. I'm sure your students love you and see you as a really fun person to hang out with, but also a person that can walk the walk and talk the talk, and they look forward to coming to your class.
I sure hope so. I mean, I need to do more recruiting, so maybe someone listening will come to Montclair next year.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. You can promote the heck out of that school. That's great. So, what do you wish you had known when you first started out in the music business?
I think let's I think I wish I would have known that well I'll tell you this. I say this to my students all the time. People get gigs because of who they know. It's because of the relationships you build. And quite often, as a female, those relationships are left up to interpretation for other people, fodder for other people. So if you get hired for one gig, there's no way to know why you got hired, right? But if you get hired back, then you deserve to be there. So that's what I try to tell all the young people I teach. Everybody gets hired for a reason. They could be best friends with somebody. They could be somebody's cousin. They could be, maybe someone owes them a favor. But if you get rehired, then you deserve to be there. So that's kind of what I always fall back on. And I wish someone had told me that so I didn't have to feel like I was defending my abilities on every single gig. It got tiring as a younger player.
Do you have any musical philosophies or catchphrases that you live by?
Yes, and it sort of relates back to the last question. I like to say it's got to be somebody, so why shouldn't it be me? And or if I'm talking to a student, it's got to be somebody, so why shouldn't it be you? When people are afraid to take a chance, when people like maybe you get asked to do a gig that you think is not like you're not really ready for, or maybe you think, oh, I shouldn't apply to that school because I'm not good enough. It's somebody's got to do it. Why shouldn't it be you? And that was somebody, Dave Ridge, who plays in the San Francisco Opera. He said that to me when I was younger, and I loved it. It's got to be somebody.
Tell me if you think this resonates with anything that you're doing. It's not my way, it's the way it is.
Yeah, yeah.
How would you interpret that?
Well, one, there's a very little that we have control over as musicians. Um, and most times we're being hired to do a specific thing. So for me and being involved with Broadway, especially, my musical opinions and or personal opinions, whatever, have no bearing on what my job is. My job is to play the trombone. So if other people don't have a problem with it, if the conductor doesn't have a problem with it, if the producer doesn't have a problem with something that's happening, then I shouldn't either. It's like remove the ego from the equation and just do your job.
You said the key thing, we're going on a job. But when you tell people what you do for a living, oh, you're going to go play. Well, yeah, we're going to play our instrument, but we're going to do a job. And we don't go on the job going, oh, they're lucky to have me today. Look they must know who I am. And I can just be me. No, you got hired for your skills. They know who you are. But again, leave your ego at the door, do the job, let your horn speak for yourself, let your chops speak for yourself. And then you say, thank you, you leave, and then you're going to get the next call.
Hopefully.
So what advice could you share with someone that's listening to you right now, that's inspired by you and thinking about doing the same things that you do?
Save all your money for the next pandemic. I would say find something that's your own. For me, there was a period of about a decade where I was just letting music happen to me. I was unhappy, partially because, I wasn't dealing with issues that I kind of had left over from my experience in grad school. But also the thing with Broadway is, you either work or you don't. There's no upward mobility. You either have more gigs or you have less gigs. You're constantly waiting for the phone to ring and hoping you haven't fallen out of favor with, whatever contractors out there. And so when I realized that, I got pretty depressed. and just didn't really know what to do. And several things happened all around the same time, but I had talked to Ingrid Jensen, which was she was probably the closest person to me that was female doing something similar to what I was doing, but I knew well enough that I could ask her a question. So there's not a ton of people out there that you can go to as a female musician, especially at the time. And I asked her, what do I do? And she said, you need to find something that's your own. And she was right. She was right. It took me a few years to put Bonegasm together, but once I did, it opened up this door for me into enjoying music again in a way that I thought was closed forever. And if people, whatever you're pursuing, whether it's teaching or being in an orchestra or being a famous jazz musician or whatever it is, if you can have something that's your own and no one else can touch, the only reason this thing is successful or not is you. And then you can define what success is. Success for me is making music that I like to play. So, if you have that, no one can take that away from you. And that's would be my advice.
Well, bravo. Because on the flip side, when I was younger, I studied with some very well-known teachers, but these people divided their time between maybe teaching 1 or 2 days at a well-known music conservatory, but they were on Broadway 5-6 nights a week, or the matinees, or then running to a recording session or doing a live performance with Bernstein. But they were working so much that they were so burnt out, but they weren't willing to give any of the contacts up. So They never had a chance to say, wait a minute, I'm going to schedule a recital at Carnegie Hall for myself. I'm going to be doing the Glazunov. I'm going to be doing this. I'm going to be doing that. They just never did. And they were just so miserable, but they were just brilliant musicians.
Yeah. I mean, you and I put together could probably make a list right now of 100 miserable musicians we know. Right?
That's another book.
Yeah. I mean, it's too, and I've been that person too. It's not that I could play a recital at Carnegie, but I was too afraid to turn down any work because I was afraid it wouldn't be there when I got back. And I understand the mentality. It's a mentality of scarcity, and that's something that is dangerous for us as creative people. It might be true, but also what we're doing, it's just sort of killing the thing inside of us that attracted us to music to begin with. And what we do can just be a job if you want it to be, and for a lot of people it is, but it can be so much more than that if you can get to the right mindset, and that's where I try to be. I'm not going to say I'm successful all the time or even most of the time, but I try to be where I'm actively pursuing joy in music.
Well, you're striking the right balance, so bravo to you. That's should be something you should consider writing for, one of the papers as wellness for musicians out there. You have a lot to say. That's great.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
My pleasure. So where can my listeners find you on social media? And do you have any new projects / live gigs coming up?
Sure. So we do have a live gig. It'll be at Silvana in Harlem on March 3rd from 8 to 10 p.m. And that's free, but they do pass the hat, as we would call it in the business. So come and bring lots of spare $100 bills to slip into. Right. But hopefully I'm working on some music, and I'm not putting myself under any pressure to finish it for that gig, but I hope I do finish it for that gig. What else? So we are going to be doing a third album. I'm in talks with all the people I'm commissioning. So that'll happen either later this year or early next year. And you can find me on social media. I'm on YouTube. I think it's just Jennifer Wharton is the handle on YouTube. And my dogs say hi. I don't know if you can hear them. So I'm on YouTube. JenniferWharton.com is my website. There's some videos up there of live performances and some virtual stuff we've done. That's super fun. And I'm going to be editing some of the videos we took during our last recording, which none of that is out yet, except for the Silent Night single. But so that'll be new music too. That's for the next album, whenever it happens. And what else? Oh, I'm on Facebook. It's Jennifer Wharton, and it's a black and white photo of a sticker on my face. And I'm on Instagram. Yeah, you can find me all over the place. I'm not really on TikTok. I do have a TikTok. It's usually just to make cocktails, but the social media thing, I enjoy it, but it's also a giant time suck.
And what about your albums? Where I know you're on Spotify, but where can...
Yeah, we're on Spotify. I will say this for any musician that's listening. Someday you're going to want people to buy your music. So please support music. Buy the music that you like. If you listen to it on Spotify and you like it, please buy it. It's not going to break the bank. Bandcamp. All my albums are on Bandcamp. You can get them through Amazon, Apple Music, whatever. They're everywhere. But yeah, buy music. That's the best way to support artists like me. I'm nobody, but I provide, opportunities for composers and arrangers to make money. So I have to pay for all that. And if you want more good music, whether it's me or somebody else, you should buy it.
Well, a slight correction. You say you're nobody, but I disagree. You are somebody. Look at all the work that you've done. People have told me this. Just stand back, look at, your accomplishments in music. Okay? No one did that but you, and you're still doing that. You were not a flash in the pan. And because you're a friendly person and genuine, and you show up on time and do the gig well, and you're consistent, that's why you're making a living in music. I've had such a great time interviewing you. I've learned so much about you. I've been a fan of yours for quite some time, and I look forward to the new recordings that you're going to be putting out there. Thank you so much for giving me your time today to interview you. I'm sure my listeners have really enjoyed listening to you and have learned quite a lot.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. You're awesome.
Oh, thank you, Jennifer. Have a great day, and I hope to speak to you soon.
All right. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thanks so much for joining me on today's show. I hope you enjoyed the conversation and could hear why my guest got chops. You can follow my podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, or Anchor.fm, and stay connected between episodes on Instagram at Got Chops Podcast. Join me on the next episode when we discover why my next guest got chops.